Good evening, basketball fans, and welcome to another episode of WBOA Courtside. You might think you're in the wrong place, but Lance is out tonight, and Josh will fill in the co-host. We welcome our guest, Erik Aellig. He's had a great career, 14 years as a basketball official, 11 of which at the high school level, 13 years in college, started on the women's side, and then transitioned to the men's side, 3 years as an NBAG league official. He's been invited to 4 state tournaments, although going back to the COVID days, he's only able to take the floor for 2 of them. He's worked a number of conference tournaments and NCAA postseasons at the college level, 4 seasons of Athletes Unlimited, and he just completed the inaugural season of Unrivaled League. He's had the opportunity to officiate the finals. Erik, thanks for taking some time. That was quite the resume.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's crazy to hear all that. It's hard to believe. I've been doing it for that long. Time flies fast in the officiating world, I'll tell you that.
Well, thanks for joining us, Erik. For listeners who don't know you and your backstory, when did you first become involved with officiating, and what was your path to the G League?
I have a very interesting first ever game officiated. I joke around about it. It's what gave me the bug. I was in 8th grade, and I had just developed tendonitis in my knees. So there was one time right before we were supposed to play some game during that like lunch break, I couldn't really run because I wasn't growing very well in my body. So with the tendonitis that I was developing at that time, and I didn't really realize it, but like I said, I couldn't run. So I offered to my teammates who wanted to play basketball that I would referee. And so I went into like the gym locker, found a thing of stripes and a whistle, and refereed 5-on-5 for like 30 minutes in a recess. Fast forward a couple of years later in high school, this is really where I got into officiating. That was a one-time thing. But in the back of my mind, I remember really enjoying it. And in high school, we were told to run the scorers tables for a lot of these youth tournaments that somebody within our community was running. And he would pay us like $5 a game. And me and a couple teammates, we'd sit there and work the clocks all day, get paid our $5 a game for whatever, 10 games. And then I saw one of my teammates whose dad was also a high school ref. He was reffing with his dad, and I asked him like, how much you getting paid? And he's like, oh, $20 a game. I was like, well, I'd much rather do that. So I went to the director, and the next tournament came by, and he handed me a metal whistle and a striped kind of throw over bib. And that was my uniform, I think, for the first like 4 or 5 youth tournaments that I refereed while I was in high school. And then got the bug right away, really got into it. Didn't have a clue what I was doing. Kept that bib and metal whistle for a while until somebody came up to me, handed me a Fox 40. And one day, I couldn't even drive yet. So one day I had my mom take me to like a Dick's Sporting Goods, get the striped shirt, all that stuff. And then my senior year, the athletic director and then the athletic director of this grade school down the street that wanted me to rep their Friday night games told me I had to get certified with the WIA. I had no idea what that was, but I just went ahead and did it and then got into it there. My path to the G League has been unconventional, to say the least. So I did my time in intramurals at UW Whitewater, had some pretty good success there, and then, started working women's college, high school varsity, and then year after year, would go to my one camp or maybe 2 camps to, try to get a bigger high school schedule, a bigger or small college schedule. When I started, I'd work the women's side, but always in the back of my mind, I'd wanted to be an NBA referee. I remember even in high school, I was working with a partner and I had told him, he's like, what do you want to do with this? And I said, I want to be a NBA referee. I had no clue what a statement like that meant. Going back on it, I can see why he had contacted me and kind of chuckled with that answer. But I had always been a big NBA basketball fan growing up, probably thanks to my time playing NBA Live as a kid. And for some reason, that's just what I was drawn to. Had no idea how to get there. Way back when I was in my intramural days, they had like an NBA tryout or developmental league, it was called at the time, like a tryout every year. I'd see that email come out. I somehow signed up for that list through the NBA website, and I would always apply to try to get into this tryout. That's how I thought you had to get in. At that time, I don't even know if the grassroots system was developed yet or any of that. I just figured with enough college experience building up over time and enough high school time that one day I'd get my shot. Lo and behold, that's not how it played out. It was actually at a point in my life where I was starting to think about what am I going to do with basketball. I was just working a small schedule on the D3 side, on the women's side. My career in finance had taken off. I was thinking about going to grad school, all that kind of stuff. And I had randomly applied to get into a camp called Stripes University. They had brought it back for a year and they actually hadn't brought it back since then. Out in Springfield, Massachusetts. And got accepted into it, not sure how. And then from there, that's really where everything took off. I had learned about Core Club Elite, which was a big like teaching platform, kind of the first of its kind of like an online mentor platform. They had a big camp at that time out in Las Vegas. I'd also met the Eastern Regional Scout for the NBA out in that camp. Didn't really think I had made much of an impression on him. But then about a month later, I went to another women's college camp, met somebody else from the Chicago area who I'd become friends with, who was pretty far along in that system. I think he was at the elite level at that time. And he had helped plug me in with how to get into the grassroots system, how to get in front of the scouts. He had filled me in on all that information. From there, just by attending that camp, after a couple of years of attending other teaching camps, I was finally able to get that invite. And then it took me about 4 or 5 years with COVID in the middle of all that to advance through the NBA system and then get hired into the NBAG League.
So you've mentioned it, you've had a unique path and different experiences all across all levels, all the way back from not even knowing what a Fox 40 is to a bib to all of it. Would you do anything different? And if you could, what would you tell others on that same path?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because I ultimately got to where I wanted to go. And there was a saying that it really took me a long time to understand, but it's better to be a year late than a year early. And had I done anything differently, although I thought I was a good referee back in my earlier parts of my career, would I had been able to take advantage of the opportunities that I'd had if I had gotten them earlier? I'm not exactly sure. But typically, I would say if there were things that I could have done better, definitely put myself out there more as far as trying to get in front of a network with people that were trying to aspire towards the same goals. And I know that was a little harder at the time because I don't think there was anybody, or if there was very few people from our area that were aspiring towards that. There was a couple things that had happened in my career. I remember in intramurals, I think it was like the swim instructor at UW Whitewater had mentioned about going to this teaching camp down in Florida. When I looked up the website, there wasn't really a lot of information on it. It said nothing about the NBA or NBA anything. And I'm like, I don't really understand how this is going to help me. And so I punted on it and not done it for a few years. And then lo and behold, it ended up being the ETA camp that now draws a lot of people that are trying to get into the NBA system and get that teaching training. I would have done that a little earlier. I would have really tried harder to build better mentoring relationships. I had had a handful of mentors coming up, but again, trying to expand to find mentors that were trying to get to that level and really follow up with them. For me, I had a high basketball IQ just from being a big, passionate fan of basketball and playing basketball. But if I hit the rules harder, watched film differently than how I had done it, granted, I didn't really know better, but if I had found a way to get that training a little bit sooner and been able to navigate that a little bit, I could have avoided some of the pitfalls that I had. And I would say that would generally keep me on a more normal course as far as trying to advance. But overall, there was a lot of things that I did learn from. And had I not learned them when I did, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it may have been a little unconventional. It might have taken me a little bit longer, but there was a lot of growth in those years. So I wouldn't switch it up too much just because I like where I'm at right now. So, and I like the opportunities that are in front of me.
As we talk to more higher level officials like yourself, Erik, I think it's very easy for outsiders to dismiss the route that a lot of people have taken to get to the path of higher level officiating and just say, oh, this person got a break. They got hired in the Big East, or they got hired by so-and-so when they were really young and they got a good break. But I think what a lot of those people fail to realize is the many years of sweat that went into getting to that point and doing things the right way and not knowing necessarily when the breaks may come your way, and just continuing to do the right things day after day. And it sounds like you're a big proponent of that, of just continuing to go down that path and pursuing your dreams and passion. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. If there was one thing about me, I was going to persevere pretty much through anything. Yeah, and that's actually a big thing, when I'm able to teach and help newer officials out, that's a big thing that I tell them because that used to eat me up a lot, thinking like, what, not me? That's a toxic mindset and to have. And it wasn't until I started getting away from that thinking and really turning it back on me that I really realized the amount of growth that I was having. And then that was always when I would get the opportunities. When I could even reflect to the first time I got my state tournament invite to the WIA state tournament, like I went into that year almost had given up at that point. Like, what do I got to do? I don't understand. Like, so and so is going. And I got caught up in that whole rabbit hole that everybody chases. And then I went into that year just free. Just I'm going to go out and work my games, work as hard as I can. And then all of a sudden, that's when I got my break. That's when I got my opportunity. And I could give you a million examples all through the COVID years and everything else, where once I went back to the drawing board and focused on what I could control and really took the time to improve just myself and not worry about how everything else shakes out, that's when I find success in my game. It's easy to get caught up in all that. It's a natural thing. To say that I'm even perfect at it at this day would be a lie. But finding those opportunities to catch yourself from going down that rabbit hole and chasing those dark thoughts is really pivotal. And just getting back to the work is really the biggest thing. And grinding out, the extra film session, the rules review. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And even those unicorn people that we see that are magically getting hired in however many years or whatever, at any level, or get that state tournament opportunity early, I would say they face their own challenges as well. It's easy to judge them from the outside, but there's a lot of other challenges, whether somebody's might be on the fast track or on the slow track, if those things even exist, and that we all go through, whether it's, your personal life, your job, all that kind of stuff. There's always something that's going on. So being able to navigate all that and then still continue to do the work that you need to do to excel at a given level is really pivotal. And that's what separates a lot of officials that are going up to the higher level for the long term. I've come across tons of officials either early or in the middle of their careers that I've labeled and pegged as like, oh, this official is going to go D1. This official is going to get into the G League. This official is going to go whatever level it may be, whatever high level it may be. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen it's a little bit of adversity rattle them. And now they've either spiraled where they stopped doing the work or they've quit altogether. And it's like, man, you were right there on the door, and you just never know when your opportunity is going to come. So for anybody that's really looking to pursue, whether it's professional route or trying to get into Division I or even break into your first varsity league, that may feel like they've hit a wall. From my opinion and from my experience, you could reflect back on, what is in your control that you can do to set yourself up for an opportunity or to be ready for when you get that moment, and really turn it back to your work. And whether or not that opportunity ever comes, the satisfaction of knowing that you put in the work and you prepared yourself to the best of your ability will be more rewarding than anything anyways. So, and that goes for anything, not just officiating, your family life, your professional career. I've just found that recipe works for everything. Focus on what you can control, persevere through the external obstacles, and just keep going forward. Don't give up on yourself. Let whoever it is say, hey, you're not ready for this level at this time or whatever. Let the decisions makers make their decision. You just focus on, kind of what's in your control.
So, Erik, you've had experience at all different levels, all different opportunities. We've hit on that. You've also hit on that rules piece, but that knowledge is so critical, especially as you progress into the professional levels. Can you explain how you juggled managing multiple codes, and then really now as you focus on those other levels, what does your rules preparation process look like, both in the off season and then during the season?
Yeah, so it's funny. I had to learn and make a lot of mistakes early on in my career to really understand the importance of rules. Fortunately, they were at the smaller scale, but I had made so many errors. I mean, I used to think that rule study was just your cramming and you're studying to pass your test before the year. For my first women's college game, I didn't even know that the rules were different from men's college. Like, I had no clue it was a completely different rule book because I had not even opened the rule book at that point. I just figured basketball is basketball. And I had made that mistake a lot early on in my career. At the level that I'm at now, obviously I had learned through all those other prior mistakes and failures that rules are important, not only just for adjudicating challenging situations and adjudicating the right penalties and all that kind of stuff, but really just understanding the product that it is that you are working, understanding the language. Once you understand how your game and that rule set works, it really gives you an advantage to making better decisions when you're out on the floor. It gives you more confidence. So some things that I've done, I have learned to not try to, as they say, build Rome in a day. Like, don't try to cram everything for that one test or that one quiz. It's a lot of little work continually. Now, am I perfect at it? Can I come up here and say that I've studied rules for the last 500 and whatever days that I've been in the G League every day? That would be a fabrication. That'd be a lie. But for the most part, I plan what my calendar is going to look like. And whether or not as we get closer to the season, I try to hold myself accountable to that daily work during the season. And then in the off season, like you said, when I'm juggling different rule books, a big thing that helped me was I create all kinds of charts. And some of my colleagues that I work with closely make fun of me for all the different charts. Like a spreadsheet junkie. I love working in Excel, coming from my finance background. So anything that I can do, I can rewrite the rule book within there. I've done the charts that way. And not only does it help me when I'm making my own charts similar to what's in the back of like a high school or a college rule book, it not only helps me the night of a game or whatever that I have to go back and forth and turn on one rule or the other, but it just helps me as I'm writing that in myself over time, getting familiar with, okay, this is an NBA rule. This is a college rule. This is a high school rule or whatever it is. So building my own charts has always helped me out. I found a lot of value in the last few years getting together on like a weekly rules call with my colleagues and where we go over, quizzes that we prepared. We'll throw out a rule, rule 7, shot clock, let's put together a 20 question quiz. We can discuss the 24-second clock as it pertains to rules, and we quiz each other on that. And that's very helpful. Not only does it hold us accountable, it lets us catch up to each other on a personal level, but it also, if there's a new rule or a new interpretation or something that comes out that maybe somebody heard from somebody else, it helps clear some of that murky water sometimes with rules. So rules calls have been big. Writing your own quizzes have been big. And then just breaking it down little by little. 15 minutes a day is really all it takes. 5 case plays, maybe go back to the rule book, to the rule of those case plays, check it off the list. Anytime I come across a case play and I've had that exact play happen in a game, I might write down like, hey, this game, Indiana versus OKC, you had this play happen. And then it'll just help me remember. And I do all sorts of other little things, whether I'm highlighting all the last 2-minute stuff. I'm highlighting anything that involves free throw, whatever it is, where it stands out. So when I read the rule book, it jumps out at me and I can create a list, charts. I'd use things like Quizlet to make my own quiz. I put the rule in, it'll help manufacture some stuff. Whatever it is that works for people, stick to it. Whatever you're going to stick to is really what you should do. It's just trying not to study the whole rule book and memorize it all in one night. It's just continually doing it, holding yourself accountable, doing the little work day by day, as much as you can, is what builds your rules knowledge.
Walk us through a typical game day here at the G League settings. When must you get there? What are the pregame requirements? What type of video review is required before or afterwards?
So typically we get in the night before of our game. We get into the city, and then day of game, everybody's got their own individual routines that they do, whether or not it's take that afternoon nap or go get their smoothie or go to the gym, whatever it is. But things that we consistently have to do that are required of us are we have to have a day game meeting. So typically we'll meet for 30 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour, kind of depending on the game, on the matchups, and we're just going to go over matchups. We're going to go over maybe the last time they had played, or we might go over some trends that we've seen at the league. If we've gotten any points of education or any memo updates, we'll go over that. We'll watch a little bit of our mechanics video. We'll go over a couple case plays, little administrative things pertaining to the rules, matchups, our mechanics to help really get us focused, locked in. Then we'll break, go off and do whatever it is that we do on our routine, and then meet back up. Get to the arena about 75 minutes is our requirement, but we typically get there about 90 minutes and go through security and go in kind of, start warming up a little bit. We have our security briefing. And then just like you would in the high school or college game, we do our pregame. We talk as a crew. Again, maybe we don't get into the weeds because we've covered all the high level stuff in the day game. Now we're talking back to basics, day game, all that kind of stuff. Whatever it is, some people might do a little bit of meditation, whatever it is that gets you mentally ready so that when we step on the floor at 15 minutes, we can go through all our pregame checklists and be ready for when the ball's getting tossed in the air. And then post game, the crew chief will have to file a game report where they're entering in any sort of atypical, any other things that we have to report on as it pertains to the game, pertinent plays. The crew's always going to break down the game afterwards. Usually when we get back to the hotel, It kind of depends what city we're in. Sometimes we'll watch some plays in the locker room before we head out. Sometimes we'll just wait until we get back to the hotel. And then sometimes as a crew, we will also put together like a crew breakdown where we're watching the film and then reporting on it as far as our mechanics, our positioning, our play calling, anything that's pertinent into the game. And it's just another training and development tool that we have that we can submit to our management team, to the league office, to just hold ourselves accountable and then also put in that work, what it takes to be a professional referee.
Anybody who's refereed basketball at higher levels or competitive games has to deal with certain conflicts in their games. And as much as we try to avoid them, some of them are inevitable. When it comes to conflict resolution, what advice do you have for officials in resolving those moments or those disagreements that come up in the course of the game, and any advice that you have on how to handle those situations?
The biggest piece of advice that I could give for anybody that's just kind of struggling is just don't be afraid to make yourself a little bit vulnerable and give yourself some empathy, and also express that empathy towards whoever it is, the players or the coaches in situations. A lot of my errors over the years have been when I get defensive about a call or when I get surprised that I'm getting pushback from a call. And then it leads me to being not on my toes when it comes to handling situations correctly. So I've made plenty of mistakes in the past. I'm sure I'll make plenty of mistakes going forward with communication. It's a never ending loop. But learning to have empathy and understanding of why is this coach, why are they frustrated with me? Why is this player frustrated with me? Sometimes it could be something not even related to basketball, or sometimes they're just having a bad night, or whatever it could be. It may not even be about you or the play, but try to put yourself in their shoes and try to be like, okay, they're on a 4-game losing streak, whatever it might be. The more we prepare ourselves going into the game with some of that information, and then as we improve on our game awareness throughout, we can start to see things coming. But like you said, things sometimes still will pop up and go off without any notice. It's just going back to don't get defensive right away. Just, okay, hang on. What's the situation? What's the problem? How can I handle this? At our level, we have the respect for the game guidelines. We have our standards, and that gives us a nice, almost black and white. Okay, they've exceeded the standard, or they've broken the standard. We have to penalize that. We don't just not penalize whatever our standards are, but anything that's in the middle, any of that gray area, just typical banter or communication back and forth. If we just take a step back and really listen to what they're saying, whatever the coach or the player or whoever it is saying, and try to understand their perspective, we may not even need to respond every time. It's just a simple acknowledgement at times. Most of the time, they just want to be heard. And so just really learning that. A big thing that really helped me, and anytime I enter a newer official, I almost require them to read the book Verbal Judo. And I know when I've come to WVOA classes, we've talked about it there too. I mean, I cannot tell you how pivotal of a book that was for me in really getting better at the communication. Because, like I said, earlier on in my career, I used to think handling everything with technical fouls was the right way to handle it. And I had kind of learned with a lot of growing pains that there's a lot easier ways if you just use that empathy and try to get them onto the next player, get them onto the next thing, whatever it may be. You can diffuse a lot of things. And if you do make a mistake, just own up to it. That would be another big thing that I would say. Just say, hey, you know what? You might be right on that play, or we have the ability to check it out at halftime. I'll check it out at halftime. I'll let you know if you're right on that or not. Don't be afraid to, like I said, that's what I mean by being a little bit vulnerable, because you're going to get so much credibility on a play that you know you got wrong and you're still trying to defend it to the hills. Not only you're just going to completely lower your credibility for the rest of the game, it's going to take you a long time to get that back with whoever that is that you're having that disagreement with. So those would be the biggest pieces of advice when it comes to communication, and never stop working on it. So whether or not you're at home and you're having conversations with your significant other, your spouse, a friend, there are all types of situations that you can practice these scenarios so that they're less likely to surprise you. And just like referees have a shorter list of things we should say and not say, I'm convinced that most coaches have that too, because it's a pretty common short list of questions that you hear from players and coaches. Very rarely do you hear something that you're like, wow, I haven't heard that before. It's usually, what did my player do wrong? Or, hey, what about on this end? So if you practice responding to those correctly, you get better and better over time. This last thing that I would say with this is do whatever fits in your personality too. A lot of people try to communicate according to what they think that management or their superiors want, or however, and it doesn't fit their personality. And you can just tell it's just an uncomfortable situation, and it's not natural. Also, make sure it sticks to whatever works with you naturally and your personality. I don't really communicate a ton. I try to keep it short and sweet. Some people have a personality where they can say a few extra things that if I said it, I would probably get in trouble for it. I try not to cross that line as much as possible and keep it short and sweet and whatever fits in my personality. But if you have that personable personality, or that social personality where you can say a few things and get a laugh out of somebody, go ahead and try that too, especially earlier on in your career. Don't be afraid to make a few mistakes. Just keep that professional standard.
Erik, what advice do you have for those that are on the upward trajectory that have dreams of a higher level and maybe even dreams of following along your footsteps from Wisconsin and becoming a professional referee?
The biggest thing, and we alluded to it earlier, you got to find your why. I would turn it back and ask them, why do you want to do it? Is it for the recognition? Is it for the money? Is it for your love of the game? Is it because you hate your day job? Whatever it might be, because becoming a professional referee or becoming a Division I referee, it can be an extremely grueling process, especially if you have a job or if you have a family. You're trying to come up and go to all these camps and get in front of people and do all this stuff on the side. But there's a ton of sacrifice that goes into this from the beginning if you really want to put that time into it. So you have to have your why and what I would call like your North Star with your character that's going to keep you on the straight. It's going to keep your path straight when you get challenged, when you face barriers, when you have to make those difficult sacrifices. When I reflect back on even my time through the grassroots process, the things that I had to give up, whether it be my social media, certain friends, whatever it might be, the things that you have to miss, you have to understand that in order to be a high level referee, there might be birthdays you have to miss, all this kind of stuff. Outside of the glory of being on the floor at a high level game with a ton of screaming fans, there's a lot of other stuff off the floor that a lot of people don't think about. And when they don't think about it, or when they don't have that why foundation, whenever they face that adversity, that's when their core gets shaken and they start either making irrational decisions or doing things that just don't make sense. And that's ultimately what burns them out of the process. So really getting your why, really reflecting back on your time and why you want to be an elite referee, whether it's on the college or at the professional levels, and then preparing for that. You really have to embrace learning from failures. You have to embrace those sacrifices. You have to embrace constant improvement at the film review. You have to be your hardest own self-critic. You have to embrace all those things that kind of come along with it.
Well, Erik, thanks for joining us. As you said, Wisconsin has a lot of really good officials, and we're happy to see you continue to exceed and turn on the TV and see you running up and down the floor. So we wish you all the best. That's another episode of WBOA Courtside. Filling in with Lance out. Josh Mansky, thanks for joining us. And I'm Justin Marion. We'll see you next time.